Okay, so in this video, you're going to be following along with me to create that barn right here. And you can either use pencils, or you can use pens, or you can use what I'm using, which is coloring pencils. So yes, in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use coloring pencils to create this. As I said, you can use pencils, pens, or coloring pencils. Either way, this artwork should take you approximately 3 days to finish. So this assignment lasts in between 2 to 3 days, depending on how quick you are. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy the lesson. Hello, welcome back. So we're going to be drawing that barn right there. And you want to know what we're going to be using to do that? An eraser, a pencil, very simple, basic coloring pencils. A ruler as well. I forgot to mention that. Or something to be a straight edge. So something you can have a straight line on it. First thing we're going to do. The link to this picture is in the description down below in case you want to print that off. Your assignment is you are going to be drawing that with me. You are going to be drawing that, and you are, if you choose to, going to be doing coloring pencils with me. Now, on the other hand, if you don't have coloring pencils or you don't want to use coloring pencils, you can also use pens if you want, or you can just use a pencil and shade it in like we did with our value scales and form drawings. Start off by figuring out the placement of the barn. It's very simple. The barn, it's going to be dead center, smack dab. We're going to start right in the middle somewhere, probably right around in here. But let's go ahead and draw this line. So I'm going to start it right about maybe here, and it's going to go down past middle of the paper, probably right about there. Now this line is actually this line right here. So that is the line that we're going to be drawing, and that's the line that we did draw. Now we are going to kind of imagine how far down the barn goes behind all this grass because it's grown up and there is a little bit of a hill there. But the main lines that we're going to be focusing on at the moment are right here, there, over here. And then we're also going to try to link these lines together. So it kind of goes up like this and like that. So those are the main lines that we are going to try to draw in our picture right now. And we're going to draw our next line. And we want to kind of eyeball it and make sure we see where it is. It's going to be a little bit above this, and it's going to be a little bit below that. In fact, that line is probably a little bit too big. So instead, let's draw this in there, and then let's erase the areas that we don't need. So we don't need that much of it probably, and it comes down like that. So let's say we only need about that much. So let's just erase that. Okay, so there's our lines with that. And you know what? We are going to try to draw the exact same height line from here, whoop, over right about here. And that's going to be the edge of the barn on that side. So let's measure and see how big of a line that is. And it looks like it is just under 2 inches. So let's jump over here. Again, we're just going to eyeball it. We're going to see about where it is, try to get it straight enough. And then we're going to go from a 0, so that up there, down to the 2. Boom. And there we have the main lines. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw these lines together and connect them. Down at the bottom, we're connecting these two like that. And then over here, let's connect that there. Very simple. You already have the base of your barn done. If we look back at our picture, we'll notice that the peak of the barn happens right about here. And if we draw a line through it so we can see, let's make this one yellow. If we draw a line, whoops, not yellow, we draw a line through it, you can see that it kind of matches up a little bit in the middle of these two lines. And maybe a little bit off. I say the middle's right about here. So we can go into our artwork and see where that peak is. And so if we look at this, it is 4.5 inches, give or take. So half of 4.5 is 2 3/4. So let's just make it at 3, because we know it's a little bit off from the center. And we can just line this up, trying to make it as close as we can to even on both sides. And let's just eyeball where we want the roof line to be. So we know it's on this line. So let's just put it right up here. And there we have the barn. At that point, we can just draw this down from that point to match up with the roof line here. Boom. And then we can also do the same thing over there. Let's try to match about the same angle that it has. And then, if we match about the same angle, and how I did that, if you line up the back side of your ruler against the line that you drew, that is going to give you the same angle, or approximately the same angle that you had. And that way you can see exactly where the side of your barn is in relation to the other one. So let's just draw that line in there. We're already almost done with this barn. Now, if you would notice, in the barn, we are setting at an angle looking down at it. We're not looking above it. So in actuality, the roof line on the barn is going to go at a slant. Let me zoom into this so you can see it. If we go right here and let's zoom down, the roof line at that is not a perfectly straight line. It is going at a slant. So if we were to add a line into here to see where about it's going is, so it's not at the same angle. So instead of going up like we did at the base, for instance, that line's going up, instead now we need to go down. This is something that is known as perspective, and we get into this whenever we talk about perspective. So that right there is about right. I want you to notice that these lines are eventually, if they keep going like that, going to meet somewhere. This is what is known as the vanishing point. So the vanishing point in this artwork is right about there, and I drew a dot on the table. Don't draw on your tables at school, kids. Shh. Okay, so that is about the vanishing point because that's where both those lines go and meet at right there. Using that information, we can now draw the roof line going down. So we want to line it up with where the vanishing point is going to hit, which is right there, top of the roof, and draw it down. So where does the roof end? Good question. I am so glad you asked that. The roof ends right where, right about there. And how I got that angle, all I did is I lined up my ruler with this line and I just drug it over. And wherever that line ends, the corner of the barn, is where that roof line is. So now you can just draw that over. And let's add in this line here. That's basically our barn. From this point, it's just a bunch of details. We have all the mathematical side of it done. The difficult part is done. There's a missing board in that. I'm going to line it up because we want it to be kind of straight. And let's draw that line down, move it over just a little bit, and then we go and draw that line down again. And look at that. We now have a board right in there. Missing board. There's also a line going off this way. Kind of looks like a, I don't know, like a extra barn door kind of slide going on there. Add that in there. We got a big old door over here. Very easy to add that in. Just a bunch of lines. All I'm doing, I am just looking at the artwork. I'm seeing what I can see. The best way to draw something is just to look at it. That's all you have to do. Look at the lines, look at what you're drawing, and draw it. And then the roof line. The roof line, all this is really jagged. So all we have to do, make this look dilapidated, is just to really mess up these lines going on here. There's one piece that kind of goes up like that and goes shoo. And all I'm doing, just looking at the picture. I'm seeing what it looks like, and I'm just kind of freehanding adding it in. That's the beautiful thing about working with a barn that is basically fallen in. You can be as sloppy with it as you want, and it makes it look even better. Okay, so we got the main thing of the barn done. Very quick, easy to do. Now let's focus on the background and the greenery. Very, very simple to make this stuff. First off, the background, really easy. It's a line. Horizon line right here. Boom. That's as far as it gets with that. The next is the trees. All you have to do is just do some jagged lines like that, and just go up around where you think the trees are going to be. Just like that. Now trees, if you watched my other video, which spoiler, one of the choices that you could have picked was a tree. And you could pick that, watercolor it, do some pencil lines. Basically, what I said in that how to draw trees is you do squiggles. The further away it is, the tighter the squiggles. The darker it is, the tighter the squiggles. Basically, you just make a bunch of squiggles. And those squiggles make it look like greenery. Okay, now I want you to pay close attention to the trees back here. You notice that there's some darker areas here and some lighter areas. I am looking off of the reference picture to know where the dark colors are. You need to look off the reference picture. Everything you need to know is right there. So make sure you keep looking off that. Next thing we're going to do is draw in the hill. So the hill actually comes up on the barn just a little bit, I'd say right about here, and then it kind of curves down and over like that. Also kind of curves over like that right there as well. So it's kind of like it's sunken in a little bit. And then we also have the greenery around. So since this is now covered up with the hill, we don't need that anymore. Just erase that. It's approximately the same thing that we had before, just some scribbles. That's really it. So we're going to graph this out first. We're going to have the vines, because this is actually ivy growing up the side of this, and I want to kind of map out where it's going to be at until it gets to a certain point. After it gets to a certain point, then it doesn't really matter. Now for the ivy, same thing we did before. We're just going to draw in some scribbles, some nice scribbles all over the place right down through here where we think the leaves are going to be. Okay, and now that we have that done, what we're going to do, we're going to add in a few of the details with the boards and things like that. So it's very easy to do, and I know what you're thinking. Right now, we haven't even started with the coloring pencils yet, and that's okay, because we will start with it eventually, okay? We just need to get these basic shapes down first. So what you need to do, you need to go in and start adding in some of the lines for the barn, and it's really simple to do. See, I just added in that little board that was sticking up right up there in the corner, and you can pencil and shade these in if you want. That's okay. But what you want to do with this is you want to try and pencil in some of the board details that you can. So just a few of them. And all you have to do with that, you don't even have to have a ruler for this. You can just draw the lines down as you kind of see them sporadically. And like I said, this is the beautiful part about drawing a really old, dilapidated barn, because the wood that's in it is not new. It's not pristine. It is not even. So you can be sloppy with it. As long as the lines are pretty much straight, it'll still look good. Okay, now something I wanted to point out over here and right there. This part of the barn is closest to us. So that means that whenever you see the boards, they're going to be wider apart than as they get further away. As they get further away, the board lines need to get closer together. And it's the same thing over here. These lines are closer together and these lines are further apart. That's because it's getting further away from the eye. So you want to try to keep that consistent so your viewer knows exactly where the depth is going in the artwork. So we mainly have the barn done now. We just need to work on the roof. Very simple to do. We're just going to look at where the lines are in the roof. That's it. Just look at where these lines are and put them down in there. And again, they don't have to be perfect. In fact, all these little nicks that you can put in it, like this right here, that little nick, and this over here, that big old crease in the metal, all of that is going to make it look even better. So just sporadically put it in there, add a few lines going down. That's really all that you need. Just make sure that they are straight lines so they match up with the angle that you've created right here. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to start coloring. At this point, if you would prefer to just go in and use a regular pencil and shade in the rest of this and do the grass and everything else in the sky, really make it high detailed, go for it, okay? If that's what you want to do, you just want to use pencil, go for it. If you want to use pens and go in and start pen and inking this, go ahead and try it. What we are going to do, or at least what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to use some coloring pencils for this. So an example with blending coloring pencils. I'm going to have one right here so we can see it. When you blend coloring pencils, you want to start with a light color and blend it into a color that it normally blends into. For instance, yellow and blue make green. So it's a natural transition from go to yellow to green. So for instance, if I were to say go from orange to red, I would want to start with a lighter color and put that down first and very lightly put it down like that and just very lightly push on it, blend it in like we would with the value scale or form drawings. And you can see we already have a transition going from darker to lighter. Now I can take my red and I can go right in it and do the same thing and just go over it, and it all blends in together and creates a nice smooth transition. And this is exactly the same thing that we are going to be doing with the barn whenever we draw it. If you want to get more of a smooth transition, all you have to do is go in again with a lighter color and boom, we have a nice smooth transition from orange to red, just like that. So that's the same technique that we're going to be using on the barn. So the color that I would like to start with first off is going to be blue, and it's not actually for the sky. Instead, I'm going to put blue for the tin in the roof, and that is because if you look at that color on the barn, it is actually blue. So I'm going to start with this color blue, and we're going to fade it from kind of a darker blue up here down to a lighter blue. Now I'm not going to be using the same blue for everything. In fact, I'm going to go over it with a little bit darker blue, just so I can blend in the colors a little bit more up at the top. Now I'm going to go over those little lines that we made for the roof divots, and I'm going to go over them with just a little bit of the blue. Okay, so for the darker areas, you can either use a red or you can use kind of a brown. I'm actually probably going to use a red because when I'm looking at that picture, the shadows kind of look like they have a little bit of rust in them. And rust is primarily like a red kind of brown. So I'm going to use a little bit of red. Okay, and aside from some final little detailed touches that we can add later on, the roof is pretty much done on that. So now let's work on probably one of the most difficult things, which is the siding. And the siding, even though it looks difficult, it's really not. Because you might see that as black paint, and it is black paint, but the thing with that is it's not solid black paint. It's been faded over many, many years. It's got white in it, it's got blue in it, and it's got grays in it. So I'm going to start with a blue, and we're going to go over basically a lot of the areas with the blue first before we go and we start tackling the black in it. Now you may have noticed that I left some areas white, and that's because they are white in the picture. The white areas, we don't have a white coloring pencil. Well, actually you do, but it doesn't actually make things white. It just makes things easier to blend. So the white of the paper is going to be left alone for the whites that are in the artwork. So you want to think ahead about that one. Okay, so now that we have the blue down, let's try to add in the black. And we don't want to go straight black, like push down as hard as we can type deal. We don't want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to kind of go over those dark areas that are the darkest, like maybe the empty holes like that and the creases in the wood, and then we're going to shade over it. So let me fill in the dark areas first. Okay, now that we have the darker areas added in, let's go in and start shading it. Now we want to go very light at first, and we just want to shade in some of the areas of the wood. So the darker areas, like where we want the wood to stand out, where the wood grains are, we're going to push down a little bit, make that stand out more. But try and look and see where the light values are in the wood and where the dark values are, and try to match it up with the picture. Okay, so now that we have the sides of the barn done, let's focus on the greenery. Now the reason why we went ahead and filled that in with the pencil was because it's going to make it a lot easier to define our colors later on. So we want to start with the lighter colors, so kind of like a yellow, and we're going to go in with where we see the yellow at in the artwork, and we're just going to start lightly putting that in and just blending it around and making it go. Okay, now that we have the yellow in, we're going to start with some lighter green, and we're going to blend it out where the yellow was into where the green starts. So just look at where the yellows were and start blending it out, and that's all you have to do. Now, if you reach an area like this where you have a lot of coloring pencil down, you can actually take your eraser and bring that back up, and you can actually remove some of the wood grain too if you want to give that kind of effect, where you can just go down and kind of bring some of that back up. So doing that gives you a nice little effect, but it also gives you room to color more. Now that you have the lighter green, let's go into the darker green, and we're going to do the same thing. So just look at where the darker greens are and blend those in. Okay, now we are going to go into the really dark areas. And believe it or not, we are going to be using blue. So blue makes a really nice shadow for a lot of the greens. It makes it really nice and dark. So we're going to be using that. And then once we add in a little bit of blue, we are going to complement that with just a little bit of red. So yes, that together will give you a nice shadow inside of your greenery. Okay, let's move on to the grass. Grass is fun. Grass is fun because grass is easy. All you have to do with that, pick up your 3 different values of green that we have, which is yellow, light green, and dark green. We're going to kind of put these things together like this, and then we are going to go make sure they're all hitting on the paper like that, and then we're just going to make this little motion, and it's going to go, it's just kind of up and over little swishes. That's all it is, like this, and it goes just like that. Okay, now we are going to go in with a very light green. Just going to go over it like that. In the darker areas, I'm going to go over it with some brown right along in here. Darken it up just a little bit. Just look at where the darker areas are. And then we're going to keep looking at these colors, and we see some darker colors in there too. So let's go ahead, add in some blacks, just a few of them here and there. And we're actually going to kind of swish those up like we did the grass. So just like that, just kind of here and there, kind of swish it up just like that. I'm lightly putting this in. So what I'm doing with this grass, I'm kind of clumping it, like I'm going to use right here as an example. I'm clumping it, and I'm going like that, where they kind of go up and they make little whoop like that, but they're all coming out of the same place. That way it adds to the effect that there's grass there in many different colors and shades. Finally, let's go over with some lighter greens again, kind of blend all these back in. We're going to have a nice grassy looking fields. Okay, now the next step is the trees in the background. And those we're not really going to worry about very much because they are in the background. You don't really see them a whole lot. So we're just going to kind of lightly shade over those squiggles that we made with our dark green color. Kind of fill those in just a little bit very quickly. And in the really dark areas, we can go over it and bear down a little bit harder on the pencil, and gives us those darker colors in the back behind it. Next, we are going to finish up the sky. Sky is very simple. You guessed it, it's just a blue. But if you notice, there's different variations. It's actually a little bit darker of a blue right over here, and a brighter blue over here, and then kind of white down here, which makes for an awesome photograph, and it also makes for a really neat picture to color, because we get a nice fade transition, and since the barn is backed up against a white horizon, it makes the barn stand out. So let's go up here, and we're just going to start going around in small circles, shading this in, and then we're going to blend it very lightly down into a white. Now that we have that done, I'm going to take some darker blue, and I'm going to go into the darker areas that we had up here and just blend those right into the other blue that we had. Makes a nice smooth transition. Neat sky. So a light blue and then a dark blue laid over top. Final thing I want to show you, the clouds. Clouds, super easy. Take your eraser. Once you get the sky done, clean off your eraser. Make sure it's nice and clean on the top. Yep, good enough. And then you go up here and you erase where you want your clouds to be. And the beautiful thing about doing it like this is because it leaves over those little residues, and it makes it actually look like you blended those clouds in there whenever really you didn't. So, easy job making a cloud, and all it costs you is just a little bit of an eraser. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be a Mr. Gray lesson without me telling you to put your own spin on it. I showed you how to do the basics. I want you to go in and really, really spruce this up and make it your own. So there's a few things I didn't do in here. I didn't finish this out. I didn't finish the barn out completely. I left a whole section of it gone. I showed you how to do the clouds, showed you how to do the trees, showed you how to do the roof and the siding and the greenery. It's up to you to finish the rest of this barn how you want it. So you have 2 to 3 days on this assignment, depending on how long you need. Probably take about 3 days. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. Your assignment is to make that barn. You can either do it with pencil, or you can do it with coloring pencil or pen and ink. If you're doing coloring pencil, it'll probably take you 3 days. If you're doing a regular pencil, it'll probably take you 2. So use your own discretion at that. Come up with your own artwork for it. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you are not one of my students, but you'd like to follow along with our lessons, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, because that is how you're going to stay up to date with all the lessons that I upload, which I am uploading all the lessons that I give to my students in class. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Like and subscribe if you would like to. And thank you all very much. I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day.